Michelle thinks American men suck.
Let me warn you, your rage does not exist in a vacuum. If we don't get this election right, your wife, your daughter, your mother, we as women will become collateral damage to your rage. To the women listening, we have every right to demand that the men in our lives do better.
Greg Gutfeld didn't just take a jab at Michelle Obama. He peeled back the layers of her polished image, like someone tearing gift wrap off a box that wasn't meant to be opened. With that signature smirk and a scalpel of sarcasm, he cut straight through the gloss, revealing something far more calculated beneath the charm. It wasn't a rant, it was a slow, deliberate unraveling of the narrative she's carefully crafted for years. And as the dust settled, even her most devoted admirers were left staring, wondering if the icon of elegance had just blinked, or if the mask had finally slipped.
To use our voices to make these choices clear to the men that we love. Our lives are worth more than their anger and disappointment.
What's that pitter-patter sound I'm hearing in the background? It's the footsteps of Barack running to vote for Trump. So, Kat, they know that they're having a hard time with men.
Right.
Doesn't seem like this is the right strategy.
No.
She basically says that
Greg Gutfeld didn't just walk into the studio that night, he made an entrance. The kind of swagger that screams, I'm locked, loaded, and about to make someone's PR team cry into their latte. The target, none other than Michelle Obama, the former First Lady turned media darling, podcast queen, branding mastermind, and reigning empress of saying everything and nothing at the same time, all while rocking a Nike collab and Gutfeld. He came in, hot, like a caffeinated raccoon with a vendetta and a live mic. Let's talk about Michelle, he smirked, twirling his pen like it was a dagger, and the segment, his stage.
even if they run Michelle. According to a new poll, Michelle Obama isn't as strong a Democratic candidate against former President Donald Trump as many Dems would have you believe. In a hypothetical matchup, my favorite kind, Trump wins with 47% of the vote compared to Michelle Obama's 44%. I guess some of the kids whose school lunches she ruined are finally old enough to vote.
The table was set. And Gutfeld kept carving each jab sharper than the last. Her memoirs called Becoming. He mused, as in, becoming a billionaire by telling us how exhausting it is to smile at people while living in a mansion. The audience chuckled, but he wasn't done. That's when he twisted the knife. Notice the pattern, he asked. Every interview, another masterclass in strategic victimhood. Michelle's always overcoming. Always rising. Which is wild, considering she's been sitting comfortably at the top for, 15 years. This time, the laughter came louder, not just because it was funny, but because buried in the punchline was a truth so precise, so uncomfortable. You could feel the sting beneath the applause.
Continue to escalate for the Obamas. Hopefully they can settle it like men.
Now, don't get me wrong, Gutfeld said, feigning innocence like a cat with feathers still stuck in its teeth. She's smart, she's charismatic, she's accomplished. He paused just long enough to make you wonder what was coming, but let's not pretend she's some scrappy underdog clawing her way out of the rubble. This isn't Rocky Balboa's Yoda with a corporate sponsor and a personal stylist. Cue the montage. Packed speaking tours, branded lunchboxes, podcast episodes where she earnestly talks about finding balance. While standing in a designer kitchen roughly the size of a Whole Foods, Gutfeld leaned back, eyes gleaming. We're not just watching a public figure, he said. We're being sold a brand, a lifestyle, Michelle Obama. And then came the hammer. She says she doesn't want to run for president, he added, eyebrow raised. And hey, maybe she doesn't, but it's funny how every speech sounds like it was plucked straight from a campaign trail. Just in case America starts feeling nostalgic for lofty rhetoric that soars high, and somehow still manages to say absolutely nothing.
Maybe so, but her analysis seems a symptom of a greater problem that contributed to her party's loss. It goes back to seeing the group and not the person. I call it IPB, identity politics blindness. They lost not because Hillary was a woman. They lost because all they saw was a woman. Meanwhile, Trump took nothing for granted. Fact is, many voters would have happily voted for a woman, just not that one. Because unlike Trump, she didn't speak to their concerns. She only spoke of her entitlement. She just assumed that she had the vote. And just assuming a woman must vote for a woman seems pretty insulting from a man. Humans are more complex, surprising, and interesting than liberals give.
That line. Lethal. Gutfeld leaned in, channeling her signature tone, arms outstretched, voice dripping with syrupy sincerity. We need to rise above. We need to come together. We need to hope, and we need to buy my hardcover edition for $29.99. Now available at Target. The crowd exploded. Then he went for the card she plays best, the martyr card. Michelle loves reminding us how hard it was to live in the White House, he said. How she felt like she had to be perfect. Couldn't slip up, couldn't be too black, couldn't be too loud. He let the words hang, then twisted. You know, like every other first lady who had to host dinners and decorate Christmas trees. A beat then, dry as dust, except none of the others, landed a post-White House podcast produced by their husband, starring themselves. That's like writing your own 5-star Yelp review. Now the gloves were completely off. She talks about imposter syndrome, he scoffed, while being one of the most celebrated, praised, and protected public figures of our time. He shook his head. Lady, if you're an imposter, what chance do the rest of us have? The laugh was darker now, knowing. You're everywhere. My Wheaties box, my Spotify algorithm. And, somehow, even in my dreams.
Obama has openly admitted that she and Barack sleep in separate bedrooms. Here's how it works. She sleeps downstairs and he likes men.
Michelle, Obama is the algorithm, Gutfeld said, leaning back with that deadpan delivery that made the punchline land even harder. We used to say Big Brother is watching. Now Big Michelle is podcasting. The crowd laughed nervously. Just when it felt like the bit was winding down, he revved the engine for one last lap. Michelle's real power isn't in her charm, he said. It's in her untouchability. She's bulletproof. You criticize her. Suddenly you're a sexist, a racist, a monster. But if she sells you recycled affirmations, a $90 candle, and a get-inspired playlist on Spotify, that's leadership. The audience was stunned, half laughing, half wide-eyed. It wasn't just what he was saying. It was that he was saying it. Nobody touches Michelle like this. Not in public, not with this much precision, this much bite, and honestly, this much glee. It's curated, he continued. It's manufactured. It's politics, dressed up as lifestyle branding. He paused for a sip, cool as ever. At this point, the only thing more polished than her PR team is her arms. The laughter rolled like thunder. And just as it began to fade, he dropped the line that would set social media on fire for the next 48 hours. She didn't become, folks. She became a franchise.
The latest installment of What Happened in an Election That Occurred a Year and a Half Ago. Michelle Obama was asked how Trump won, and she laid the blame on Hillary. Just kidding, she blames sexism from women against women.
In light of this last election, I'm concerned about us as women and how we think. If we're not comfortable with the notion that a woman could be our president compared to what? You know, we have to have that conversation with ourselves.
As if the product, Gutfeld quipped, is self-importance with a side of kale. The room cracked up another perfect hit. But then, just for a beat, he shifted gears. Not too serious, just enough to let the edge of something real slip through the sarcasm. The danger, he said, his tone tightening ever so slightly, isn't Michelle herself. It's that we keep falling for the same trick. The glossy speeches. The emotional buzzwords. The vague empowerment mantras. He paused. It's all just packaging, a beautifully lit distraction from the reality that underneath all that inspiration, the machine keeps running exactly the same. That one hit different. Because in that moment, Gutfeld wasn't just clowning Michelle Obama, he was dissecting the entire political celebrity industrial complex she embodies so flawlessly. This wasn't about mocking her achievements. It was about questioning why those achievements always come coated in layers of PR sheen and golden hour lighting. Why we mistake visibility for authenticity. Why we clap for relatability from someone whose roughest choice of the day might be between a TED Talk or a Vogue cover shoot. And then just when you thought he'd stepped back, he leaned in one last time. Calm, cold, precise. Like a sniper with a punchline instead of a rifle. She didn't just become, he said again, quieter now, letting it settle. She became the brand.
Michelle's been busy working on a new podcast, and so far, it's been a flop. The first 2 episodes have been up all day and only gotten a few thousand views on YouTube. Half of them were probably primetime producers. But still, Michelle's spilling the family secrets, like how Barry gets on her nerves. Listen.
Barack, he had to adjust to what on time was for
Because he was on that island time.
Well, but I've got this husband who's like, when it's time to leave, it's 3:00. He's getting up and going to the bathroom. And I was like, dude, like 3:00 departure means you've done all that, It's like, don't start looking for your glasses,
She's not leading a movement, Gutfeld said, voice steady. She's leading a marketing campaign. And we're the ones buying it along with her athleisure line. Mic drop. But this wasn't just destruction. It was disruption. Gutfeld didn't just pick apart Michelle Obama's image, he cracked open the gleaming shell that surrounds every political figure who moonlights as a lifestyle guru. Because in the end, this wasn't about left or right. It was about real or fake. And Greg Gutfeld, love him or hate him, has a nose for the fake, like a bloodhound on espresso. When he took aim at Michelle, it wasn't personal. He wasn't targeting the woman. He was targeting the fog machine. The spotlight, the carefully tuned echo chamber that sells us the illusion of relatability in a $1,000 pantsuit. He was saying the quiet part out loud, that maybe the most relatable woman in America is just another carefully curated mirage. A brand built to keep you inspired, distracted, and comfortably asleep. And whether you agreed or wanted to throw your remote at the screen. One thing was certain, Gutfeld didn't just criticize Michelle Obama, he uninstalled the myth. Then, just as the laughter began to fade, he leaned forward, eyes sharp, voice low like a villain revealing the final twist on the last page. Turns out, he whispered, hope makes a hell of a product.
Talk to you about Michelle Obama's ongoing midlife meltdown, like her, like as you put it, her Stegosaurus hairdos. The utterance the other day, she says she's transitioning. I mean, I think we both know what she's trying to do by using that word.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you make of all of this? Like, what's going on in that psyche?
I think that transitioning line was meant to get attention because her podcast is failing. No one wants to watch it, and she's not used to that. She's used to being the center of attention. Everyone's interested in me. I don't have to try hard. And so now
Let's talk about the kids, Gutfeld said, grinning like he was about to open a fresh can of controversy. Because every good franchise needs a sequel. The jab landed fast and Michelle's got hers lined up like Marvel Phase 4. The foundation work, the youth outreach, the college initiative. All the right boxes checked. But here's the kicker, he continued. When was the last time any of those programs actually delivered results? The crowd stiffened. The camera cut to a panelist, nodding knowingly. The kind of nod that says brace yourself. We don't get outcomes, Gutfeld said, voice steady. We get and there it was, the line that cracked the sheen wide open. See, this is the part nobody wants to say out loud. He leaned in. Most of Michelle's legacy, it's not substance, it's vibes, it's playlists, stage lighting, speeches wrapped in gospel choirs and emotional crescendos. And yacht feels good. It always does. A beat, but you know what else feels good? A warm bath. That doesn't mean it's fixing the damn pipes. You could feel the air shift, because he wasn't wrong at least not entirely. Somewhere along the way, emotional branding had become the currency, and Michelle was cashing in. Gutfeld wasn't buying it. Not tonight. Her TED Talks, he said, with a shrug. They're motivational Mad Libs. You are powerful. You are enough. You are seen. Great. Now tell that to the small business owner getting crushed under 3 layers of red tape. It wasn't just criticism, it was a reality check with teeth. And this time, the applause came with a little silence in between. The kind that makes you think.
Michelle Obama surprised fans on our new podcast by saying her pet peeve about her husband is that he's chronically late. For example, we're still waiting on him to admit he's from Kenya. And as for Barack's pet peeve about Michelle, he's mad that she keeps leaving the toilet seat up. When she cleans it. When she cleans it. I regret that.
Tell that, Gutfeld continued, voice sharpening, to the working parent who doesn't have time to reflect on their power. Because they're too busy driving Uber after a night shift just to make rent. Now it was getting real. This isn't just about Michelle, he clarified, tone shifting from punchy to purposeful. This is about the culture she helped sculpt. A world where sincerity is replaced with slogans. Where making a difference just means changing your profile picture. He was rolling now, angry, just lit up like someone finally saying the thing everyone had been tiptoeing around for years. You can't be the voice of the voiceless, he said. When you're speaking from a $12,000 settee couch, under a halo light, with your personal chef plating dinner in the next room, boom, pin drop. And just when you thought he'd reached the peak, Gutfeld swerved into something bold. He compared Michelle Obama's cultural influence to an iPhone commercial. Looks sleek, sounds progressive. Everyone wants one. But the moment it glitches or doesn't deliver, he smirked. You blame the user, not the system. Michelle Obama is Apple politics, he declared, shiny, expensive, and somehow, always immune to criticism. The metaphor was ridiculous and dead on. She sells empowerment the same way Starbucks sells identity, he added. Personalized, pleasant, and of course wildly overpriced.
The wonderful Megyn Kelly in the United States. Now, why is Michelle Obama whinging? She seems to always be whinging. Why are things so hard for her right now?
I know. I mean, because when you're thinking of victims of this awful world, you think of Michelle Obama and how terrible we've all been to her. This woman is a one-woman destitution derby. Every time we check in on her at her podcast, she is feeling sorry for herself. She is criticizing Barack Obama or this country. She never has a positive word to say about anything. And the latest example was when she went on this other guy's podcast, Jay Shetty. She goes and sits down with him and he asks her, what are you afraid of? And she starts off by saying, well, my fears aren't for me. You know, I think about the streets. My fears aren't for me.
Well, in this current climate for me, it's,
Someone in the crowd lost it. An audible snort of laughter broke through the air. Gutfeld shot them a nod, like a maestro acknowledging the one violin that hit just right. Then came the closing argument. The moment you knew was coming, but still, hit like thunder rolling through a quiet valley. She doesn't need to run for office, he said calmly, almost gently. Because she already governs something more powerful than policy perception. A pause. Then he dropped the crown jewel. She's the empress of optics. And when you control how people feel more than how they think, you don't need a ballot. You've already won. You have something stronger in questioned influence. Now it wasn't just a roast, it was a revelation. Gutfeld leaned back, hands folded, as if to say checkmate. Michelle's superpower isn't her intelligence, he said, it's that she's your brand manager. And guess what? You're not the client. You're the product. Silence. Then a wave of laughter, the kind that's half amusement, half oh damn, he really said that. Applause followed like a release valve blowing, because in one fell swoop, Greg Gutfeld had done what so few dare to even try. He stripped away the glow, the glam, the curated mystique of America's most polished icon. And what he revealed wasn't a villain, or a fraud, but a perfectly calibrated machine running on influence, not ideals. Not out of malice, not even out of partisanship, but because someone had to lift the curtain. And Greg Gutfeld, he didn't just lift it, he torched the whole stage.